Philippines, despite being known as one of the most family-oriented nations in Asia, is seeing a quiet crisis. The country is experiencing a rising trend of solo motherhood. Is this proof of women's empowerment, or is this just the aftermath of unchecked male irresponsibility? Good morning, loves. It's a beautiful day. Coach V here, your love solution provider, bringing you a brand new way to level up your love life. Welcome to Love Hacks. Today's episode hits deep, my gosh, especially for all our strong solo mamas out there. Here is it. A World Health Organization report found that there are 15 million single parents in the Philippines. And get this, loves, over 15 million of them are single mothers. Yes, that is 95%. So the question is, why are there so many single mothers in a country that prides itself on being family first? Let's get into it. Columnist Eleanor Pinugo wrote a powerful piece about this on Inquirer. She highlighted what most Filipina single moms go through. They go through emotional burnout, no partner support, no legal accountability, and many working 2 to 3 jobs just to survive. These are really hard times, my love. But the main question is, why are there more women choosing solo motherhood or ending up there? Loves, why do you think is the reason why we have so many solo mothers in the Philippines? Isn't that surprising?
Well, according to yung discussion na gagawin mo mamaya,
Wow!
there's so many reasons here. And actually, because we have a guest here to talk about it, let's go through those reasons and figure out if we can agree on it later.
Yeah, sure. So one of the top 3 reasons why we're seeing a lot of Filipinas ending up as solo moms is, sorry, but men do walk away. And society lets them.
Yeah.
There's no shame or consequence for fatherhood abandonment here, only for motherhood perfection. So guys, have you met of a solo mother who had this story na umalis lang when I was pregnant, when he learned that I was pregnant, or when the baby was born, hindi lang nagpakita?
Yeah.
Familiar?
I have friends who are solo moms, and then as soon as the dads found out that they were pregnant, they up and left.
No, I can't wait
To meet them.
No, I don't
To find them.
Oo, hanapin natin yung mga tatay na yan.
I can't wait to know why they do this. No, a lot of people wants to have children, but now you've met a lot of men also who runs away from being fathers. But also, we have romanticized martyrdom here in the Philippines. We were raised to endure, di ba nga, pinagyayabang pa natin that we are so resilient, but we were not raised to live. But when love turns toxic, leaving becomes survival. And eto pa, number 3, no ring, no rights, especially with the live-in setups here in the Philippines. No, we are left without protection, leaving women raising babies while man ghosts with no legal trace. So let's be real, loves. Some women are choosing to leave toxic men instead of keeping a complete family. But they do really pay the price. Joining us today is someone who's making sure we don't just talk about this very important topic, but we actually do something about it. Please, let's welcome columnist and She Talks Asia co-founder and CEO, Eleanor Pinugo. Welcome on It's a Beautiful Day, Lynn.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for having me. Good morning.
What a beautiful woman. Lynn, let's jump right to it. In your article, you cited that 95% of single parents in the Philippines are women. Why do you think this is happening? And despite our culture's emphasis on family,
Right. Well, I think you, Coach V, you mentioned several of those factors already, right? Which is, I think, one, there are men who are unable to live up to their responsibilities once a child is born or once a woman gets pregnant. And unfortunately, as you had mentioned, there aren't many sanctions for that, right? So it's often left to the women to bear the sole responsibility of raising their children. But I think one thing you also mentioned there is martyrdom. For many women, we are conditioned to just take it as is, when in fact, we should be going after the men, right? Like, so if they're not going to be involved in the rearing, for example, we should be at least going after them to make sure that they're providing.
Okay.
And because I also work extensively with low income communities through Mano Miga, which is the nonprofit that I run, um, one of the many things I see also, right, is that the plight of single moms, it also correlates with the fact, for example, that we have high teenage pregnancies here, correct? And of course, when you're young, and you become pregnant, it's not automatic also, and it shouldn't be automatic for a woman to get married. But again, the responsibility now of raising that child often falls on the young woman, with very minimal expectation from the young man, even if supposedly they are both parents or co-parenting that child. So yes, we pride ourselves for being family oriented, but unfortunately, in terms of our societal expectations for women and girls, there's still that, I guess, unfair burden placed on women when it comes to child rearing, when it comes to raising a family. It's always placed on women, where in fact, men, again, they can, I guess they're allowed to skip that responsibility through many factors, right? And
Yeah.
that's really something, also a narrative that we should change for everybody.
Right. Thank you for sharing that, Lynn. You've mentioned something about going after them. So, do you think the law, and we have RA 11861, is it enough, or are there gaps in the implementation?
You know what I love about it is that it really, one, it expands the definition of a single parent, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to be married. I mean, you don't have to be married to the man for them to be considered as your co-parent. So if they abandon you, then you can qualify as a single parent. For example, whereas before you have to be married, right, for you to have access to certain rights. It also expands the definition to other forms of family. So for example, if your husband or if your wife is an overseas Filipino worker but is low skilled, so they're not earning as much, you can also qualify, actually, as a single parent, and you can qualify for the benefits afforded for you. Something I highlighted in the article, is that even our threshold for a dependent, so before it was 18 years old, now they raised it to 22 years old, which again is a big help for many single parents, because again, that also increases the length, right, in which they can avail of certain benefits. Of course, as you know, as with many cases in the Philippines, we have beautiful laws, but there are always areas for improvement when it comes to implementation. One of the things also is that not a lot of people are aware, that there are laws and benefits like this. They need to be able to register for their local government unit, for example, for them to be able to avail of these benefits. But it's not necessarily something that a lot of people know. In terms of translating them into actual initiatives and support, we do need more programs. And
There you go.
be fair, yeah, to be fair to our government, right? We have the DSWD. They launched an initiative called Program Solo, in 2024, and they piloted it in several cities and towns across the Philippines. And the idea is to understand how they could do a nationwide rollout of these programs, which is really about providing more support, not just financially, but even psychosocial support for single parents.
Yeah, you know, Lynn, I just love, I love that you're talking about this. Just for those who are not aware, yung expanded definition of solo parent is also, you mentioned the OFWs, those with partners in incarceration, so those who are currently in prison, either due or solo due to death, detention, or incapacity from the spouse. Also, grandparents who take care of their grandchildren by themselves. You know, you mentioned it, a lot of beautiful laws, a lot of ways that it could have been implemented better. And you mentioned some of the gaps there. But let's now focus on some of the effects that these do have on these single parents, especially these moms in particular, considering they are the vast majority. When we talk about yung mga emotional toll that they have, minsan kasi, um, there are these benefits, there are these laws, but they don't really have the, how do I say this, right? The capacity to be able to consider that alongside all the other things they're doing. You mentioned 2 to 3 jobs. You mentioned all of these other burdens that they go through. When you talk about the toll that they go through, what do you see?
Well, I think you hit it there, right? Which is, you're just so busy juggling the many responsibilities that you have. Of course, you need to work for your child, and of course, if you're the only one raising your child, there are so many responsibilities that come with it that fill up your day. In fact, because you're juggling two roles, you don't necessarily able to fulfill both. And the thing is, to be able to avail of these benefits, you need to register, you need to submit, proof, for example, and obviously that's always not something that you can always prioritize given the many things that you're doing. Yes, it's very important to highlight the emotional toll. It's not just also the feeling of burnout, but really the idea of feeling you're alone, right? I think
Yeah,
that there's an emotional, I guess, burden, or there's that emotional pressure of knowing that the life of this one person is solely dependent on you, and you cannot necessarily turn to anybody for help. And those are the things that definitely can compromise their ability to seek help, right? And I think this is not necessarily just limited to single mothers, right? But it's really applicable to everybody who's going through or who is in a situation wherein they're forced to go through it themselves. Even though sometimes help is available, we're not necessarily in the mindset to ask for it. And I guess that's why also in She Talks Asia, right, we're all about changing these narratives, and
Lynn,
increase.
sorry, we want to jump in here because you mentioned the word mindset here, and I think Coach V has something here
Yeah.
when it comes to Gen Z in particular and mga millennials.
Thanks, Lynn. Yes, so let's talk about moving forward. What mindset do you think should millennials and Gen Z need to unlearn para we don't continue and be part of another statistic?
Definitely. And it's not even just for Gen Z and millennials. I think growth mindset is something that everybody should study. No, because it's something that it's like a muscle, right? Like the growth mindset is like a muscle. You need to be able to practice it so you can strengthen it. You need to exercise it constantly. And I think when you do have growth mindset, not only are you able to see challenges as opportunities for growth and learning, but also you start to realize that when you're asking for help, it's not a reflection of your worth, right? Asking for help is part of being human, being vulnerable is part of being human. And what matters is the way you view a situation. Again, it's not, you're not defined by it, but what matters also is what you do with it and how you respond to it. So yes, it's for everybody, especially something that we should be teaching the kids and our students in school.
Lynn, it's a pleasure having you. Thank you for joining us, columnist and She Talks Asia co-founder and CEO, Eleanor Pinugo.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Some say women are now empowered, that they leave too easily. But is it really about being empowered or finally choosing peace? The goal isn't to demonize men, but to understand this. When men don't step up, women are forced to rise alone. And that rise often comes with a heavy price, financially, emotionally, and socially. Remember, loves, being family-oriented doesn't mean tolerating pain in silence, even though we've been conditioned to do that. Real love builds, protects, and stays. And a man who disappears after creating life, that's not a man. That is a lesson. We need more policy protection and partner accountability. So, my loves, if you're a single mom, and by the way, before we even say that, any more final thoughts? Anne, how on this one?
Some of my single mom friends, they aren't single moms by choice.
Yeah.
The men really left, they just up and left. So they are forced to be strong. Right. So I think the situation is different when the man is there, but he doesn't step up. So the women
I
are
would
forced
also say
to step up.
one of the more interesting scenarios also, there's that. there's also yung mga magulang na ayaw sa lalaki. So, pinapaalis sila.
Yes, that too.
Yung mga
Yeah.
tipong like,
Yeah.
we don't want the guy there in the picture. So, they say that, look, you're better off a single mom. Kami bahala sa'yo.
Yes.
So, may mga ganun.
So may
rin.
ganung
Yes.
situation
Oo.
also, and they don't even allow the dads to see their kids.
Yeah, may mga
Binabawal
ganun.
talaga.
No matter
So,
how much the guy tries, kasi ayaw ng pamilya.
Yeah.
That's why we are here in Love Hacks. We are opening the floor. If there are some, fathers and daddies who'd like to share their thoughts, what's on the other side, feel free to reach out to us.
Alan, meron ba? No?
But yeah, very.
But
Sure.
props to
Meron-
all
Wait
the
lang.
go.
Wala daw. Okay.
Wala
just-
naman daw.
Yeah, our
Just to
number
make
one
things
respondent.
clear, Alan is malinis ang konsensya niya.
Responsible dad naman, Alan.
Yes. But props to all
Let's
the
change
single
topic daw, guys. Okay.
Change topic.
You were saying,
Props
Ann.
to all the single moms out there.
Ah, yeah, 100%.
Kasi I am a mom myself, and I know how difficult it is, how challenging it is to be a mom, especially, when they go through yung different stages in childhood. May mga pagka tantrums, pag toddler, tapos pag teenager na.
Grabe,
Oh my
diba?
God, it's impossible because I have a teenage daughter, and grabe ang hirap nun i-handle, and I have my husband to assist me, so I can just imagine how hard it is if
were
you're just
alone.
doing it all by yourself. So I have so much respect
Yeah.
for the strength of single moms, and we were talking about the laws and the benefits a while ago that they can avail. Alam ko not all single moms know that, so sana may mga programs tayo that really tell them or
Awareness
educate them.
drive,
Yeah,
yeah.
awareness
Yes.
drive.
And maganda nga yung sinabi ng guest natin kanina, you need to register in order to avail of those programs
Yeah.
because not a lot of people know that. So my loves, if you are a single mom watching this, know this. You are not less, you are not damaged goods. You are a warrior. And if you're dating one, guys, respect the role she plays, because loving her means loving her children too. That's it for today, loves. This is Coach V, giving you real talk about real love. DM us your love dilemmas at Dating Coach V, and let's not just talk about love problems. Let's solve it. Thank you to Giselle Hotea Morado for today's empowering outfit. See you again next week here on It's a Beautiful Day. Love you.
Napaka-juicy yung topic.